This meeting is always, for me, an opportunity to get together with some of my dearest friends and my most valuable colleagues from around the world. So, although I have learned something from the formal presentations about trade, the major implications for me have been new projects, new ideas, new modes of collaboration which have been developed and solidified during the informal discussions here. The lessons which came out of the formal presentations for me were once again the horrifying and the incredibly rapid impact that trade and blind development is making, particularly on the poorer countries which don't have the institutional or the economic resources to defend themselves. I mean, you just see cultures and environments being torn asunder to increase the profits of a few firms, and this is happening very quickly. For an international sustainable economy, I have to say I've always been on the pessimistic side of this group, and I don't see emerging out of our discussions here really believable near-term guidelines. My conclusion from the meeting is it's going to take some kind of a real serious collapse, probably of an environmental nature, to force people into behaving in a different and I hope in a more sustainable way. But it isn't going to emerge in any easy way out of the current trends. The powers for blind development are just too strong.
A really free trade and environment. And one of the conclusions have been that there's not such a thing as free trade, that all trade is regulated to a more or less larger extent. But I think another important conclusion is that all this talk about deregulation of trade and making it even freer is nonsense. That what we have to do is now to consider very carefully all the kind of regulations that is needed for the trade. Because otherwise the trade will destroy developing countries, it will destroy environment in developing countries, it will even destroy environment in industrial countries, which is already done to some extent. So I think what I got out of it was that I will go back and be more convinced that in the EEC, the European Economic Community, so-called European, that we will have to change the priorities. We will have to change the priorities so that trade has a much lower priority and environment and social equity has much higher priority. And I think that will be a very hard fight, but if we don't win that, trade will ruin everything.
And what are your guidelines for a sustainable international economy?
Well, my guidelines are that in all kinds of regulations and economic support, the guideline for sustainability should be that no money should be given to projects, no investment should be made in projects that are not sustainable. And if we don't start now, they'll continue making investments in the wrong things, in the wrong ways, and therefore ruin environment again.
This is the first time that I've come to a Balaton meeting, and I came here anticipating that there would be tensions to discuss among the trade-offs between economic and environmental and social objectives, and indeed there were. And I felt in the course of the meeting that there was a positive balance restored in considering all three, because I felt at the outset that there was a hostility toward the economic perspective that was unjustified, that threw out the benefits of it along with the excesses, and I felt that that got put into better perspective. On the other hand, what struck me pretty strongly by the end, and remains one of the impressions that I take away, is that the social side is not being dealt with in what I consider to be an adequate way. That it tends to be dismissed in a couple of key words that really don't come near to dealing with the nature of the realities. So that's one conclusion. The other conclusion that I come away with is many people talk about the need for an agenda, that is, to have an idea of what it is that we're after, and not just that we're after something different from what we have. I feel that that agenda is going to require an effort of imagination that isn't adequately taking place, at a level that seems operational. And so in general and relatively abstract terms, people talk about community. In really concrete terms, people talk about particular realities in particular communities, but I think that there's some intermediate level of generalization about dealing with certain problems, such as what you yourself, Bernie, if I can put it that way, have called livelihood planning. That is something that's really concrete and that at the same time deals with not just the issues of things that would be nice in our social life, but things that are indispensable in order to carry on the life of a community. And these are the kinds, these two things that I've mentioned are the kinds of work that I think remain to be done.
Okay. This was another great Balaton meeting with a very relevant topic. I always feel that the encounters with the friends of the Balaton group are very special. They are very refreshing experiences, and also it's like charging batteries after a long year of work. And the intellectual stimulus that these meetings provide are very important, especially when you come from a developing country and are able to meet people from very different countries with specific problems and ideas. Also, I feel that the lessons that we have learned from this topic on trade is that there are no easy solutions. It is a very complex problem that with other linkages like the structural adjustment programs, the debt issues,